Thank you. Thanks so much for the lovely warm welcome. And yes, you're quite right. I am coming to you live from Bali, which feels like a rather strange place to be speaking about this. I am on holiday, but I've got an incredible view of the pool and the sea, and it's all incredibly relaxing. But I have spent about 5 hours stuck in traffic going through Denpasar earlier today. So suffice to say, I never really stopped thinking about how we can make our cities uh, ever more bearable. So I'm really pleased just to be giving you a whistle stop tour this morning of what we've been working on with Living Lens. So the essence of Living Lens and how we've approached this is that we really want to be able to create and to help our clients to create thriving environments that also enhance and protect our wild spaces alongside our built ones. And this is very much underpinned, my career starting off in international development, but latterly as an author and advisor on urban transformation and building out really robust future strategy. So that's where how I'm coming to this. And at Accenture, through our sustainability services hub, our approach to challenges underpinning urban transformation is to unite the three key pillars, really, and that's social inclusion, so effectively communities, nature restoration, and climate action. And these have historically been dealt with in fairly siloed ways. And our intention, our ambition is to bring these together. Living Lens, which is what I'll talk to you about this morning, is very much a product of our Net Zero Cities work, and some of you might already be familiar with that. And so now any further work that you hear about us doing in the urban transformation dimension comes through the Living Lens kind of badge, if you like. So I'm going to canter through the headline points, but please consider this very much an amuse-bouche rather than a meal. So if you're still feeling curious and hungry for some more details afterwards, do please reach out to me for a further conversation. So what can we do with the very short period of time that we have this morning? And I'd like to think that we can, okay, maybe we're not going to change the whole world in 20 minutes, but what we can do is collectively challenge the dominant worldview that has sort of pervaded our thinking about urban transformation. And the thing that I would really like everybody to take from this is the reminder that it doesn't matter how big our businesses are, our organizations are, it doesn't matter how great the scale of our ambition or the reach of our impact or the scale of the challenge. Change is inherently motivated and affected by human action at its core, and this change starts on our doorsteps and in our neighborhoods, and that's where we began the research for Living Lens. So the key points really are, firstly, to accelerate a just transition, we must reconnect business to place. There's been a real gradual disconnection of that, and that's what we're seeking to remedy through this work. Secondly, that communities really are the gateways for sustainable transformation. If we don't have communities on board, if we're not generating resilient, innovative places for people to live, to work, to learn, etc., we won't be able to activate the change at the scale and the pace that we need. The collaborating for local impact requires a deep focus and a new focus, really, or a sharpened focus on three key filters, if you like. So the first is quality of life. The second is on solutions that are co-designed and participatory. And the third is tangibility. And tangibility is really about getting away from the performative, very quant-based, objective, target setting type approach. There's nothing wrong with setting targets. That's absolutely not what we're saying in this. But we have to be able to back them up in such a way that they resonate with the real time lived experience of the people who are being affected by the ambitions that we're seeking to pursue. So to do this at Accenture, we are very much starting with our collective urban future, and some of the business benefits, and I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail. But it includes us being able to articulate our value in a different way, in a way we haven't done previously, to de-risk our operating context, which we know are becoming ever more complex, to meet legislative and regulatory requirements, and also to become a partner with communities, so that value is very much something that is co-created. Right, and so just up on the screen there is Accenture's approach. So really, what we want to show from this is that the transition not only needs to be just, but it also needs to be swift, and it needs to be secure, and it can only be achieved with balanced and equitable. With a balanced and equitable perspective on the challenges we face. So I will take you through a few. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a slide malfunction here, but that's fine. So why, you might be thinking, why on earth, and having heard such excellent examples as well around the table already this morning, which have very much focused on the all important smart digital solutions, why on earth is a company like Accenture so interested in the humanness of the solutions? And the reality is, as has already been pointed out, that there is no future, there is no sustainable transformation without the human. And behind all of our incredibly complex built technological systems, the experience is inherently a human one. And the reason that we're concerned about cities in particular is that we are living at a point in time where the majority of the world's population will be urbanized, be urbanized by 2050. And cities tend to, as I know you're all only too well aware, really tend to concentrate the scale of the challenges that we're seeing. So if you just bear with me one moment, I'm so sorry, my slide seems to be a little bit stuck. Right. Okay, so I just want to tick on to some of the wins for businesses. So the first one here on the screen is about focusing and articulating impact. So inherently, any transition that we make, be it just or unjust, whether that's real or perceived, it's an inherently subjective experience. And so we need to honor the fact that people, the humans involved, the communities involved, are not necessarily going to resonate with the most objective data. So we need to be able to find a way to translate our impact into stories, into real-time nuggets that resonate with the average person. Now, the second benefit that we have up on the screen is de-risking and future-proofing increasingly complex operating environments. So ultimately, the success and the perceived social relevance of any business and the longevity of any intervention is really measured in terms of quality of life when it comes to communities. And we're seeing increasing examples of communities being willing and able to mobilize at scale. We've got, examples of increasing environmental and climate related litigation. And then on the other end of the scale, we've got very organic, small-scale, community-driven initiatives like the barter economy and the exchange economy, for example. We've got the rise of mutual aid, which really spawned during COVID as a result of COVID and has carried on at pace. So these are the kind of trends that are sitting alongside the challenges that we're already dealing with. So we're missing a trick if we don't understand the value of what communities can offer us, but also the risk if we don't recognize and meet them kind of where they are. I'm not going to go into increasing regulatory and legislative requirements. We know that they are ever tightening. We know that investor scrutiny is becoming sharper. There's particular focus on credibility, and that credibility piece is what is leading investors and regulators and indeed communities to interrogate the data and not just to view it on its face what one way or the other. So that loops back to the original point about being able to focus and articulate impact. So we're not concerned anymore about, we shouldn't be concerned anymore about what our inputs are. We're far more concerned about what the outcomes are. What is the so what as a result of the interventions that we're making along the way? And finally, this is very much about a partnership approach. Now, partnership with communities is not a new concept. That has been obviously going for an incredibly long time, but there have been different iterations of what partnership means. And we're really seeing collaboration at an inflection point now, or it needs to be at an inflection point, which is where value is something that is co-created. So there's a real rise in terms such as co-creation and co-design and participatory planning, participatory democracy, for example, because these are the levers that people are most interested in. So these are some of the key win areas. And the slide I have up here is just simply to say, and this is stating the bleeding obvious, but I think it's worth coming back to, is that what is important to communities isn't always obvious to an organization. And the key driver behind all of this at the moment is well, not at the moment, for a long time to come, is this hyperlocalism. And hyperlocalism has been increasing for the last decade or so, but it was massively accelerated, obviously, during COVID. And so this is why we need to look at focusing. We don't always, we're not always able to agree initially on the mechanisms for achieving an outcome, but we can, communities and businesses and third sector and public sector alike, can agree on the outcomes that we're working towards. And that's why I speak a lot about quality of life. And we will continue to speak about this and to work with clients on this, because it is so critical. And there will be very few instances that any of us will be able to cite where quality of life, improved quality of life, is not an outcome, a shared outcome worth pursuing. And so this is the lens that we want to take with Living Lens. It's not just about going after decarbonisation, for example, or going after net zero. We want to be able to identify what is going to generate multiple, a network of solutions for a network of people. And the priorities might be different, will inevitably be different in different places. You know, the priority may be preserving and protecting and celebrating indigeneity and heritage and arts. It might be the accessibility, for instance, of our streets, whether that's accessibility to commuters, accessibility to children being able to play, to less able-bodied being able to transport themselves around. It might be the accessibility of affordable nutrition, for instance. The photo on the top right is the school dinners, which has been, but we've been extremely vocal about in the UK. It might be about preserving ecological integrity, not just for ecotourism value, but for pure existence value, and you know, reducing human wildlife conflict is becoming ever more important. And we don't need to go through all of them, but you can see there are some examples of access to high quality public realm space, to democratic arts, to the ability to make free speech, health and the cleanliness of air, the availability of water, availability of sanitation, repurposing of what otherwise might be private space. So suffice to say, the priority areas can differ hugely, and that is why it's so important to go in with the hyperlocal perspective. So I'm quickly going to take us through the next three sort of focal shifts that we've advocated for. And the first one, as I've already said, is quality of life. So the essence of this is what we looked at, what the traditional, what the dominant view is, the dominant focus has been on our bricks and mortar assets, and the fact that if we just get the equation right of I mean, I am generalizing. There's far more nuance to this in the report. But if we just get this equation right, that we've got built assets that are able to tell us how people feel, and what the air temperature is, what the air cleanliness is, and so on, that this alone is almost enough to make communities thrive. When actually people will be motivated by and are motivated by what affects them day to day. And that's why we've spoken so much about quality of life. So rather than smart interventions, people want socially smart. And so that's the concurrent thread that we're working with here, is that we need to be able to reflect needs and experiences, and therefore we need to look at what that soft connective tissue is, the infrastructure of communities, like spaces, for example, that support sociality, support what it is to be a human. This might be green and blue space, for example. We've also looked at dignity and safety, wildlife and nature, and memory and imagination. So as part of the immersive anthropological research that went into Living Lens, we spent an awful lot of time with the 9 communities that we interviewed as part of this. And some of the reflections, as much as they are laudable, are often pain points for the community, simply because they haven't necessarily, it's not because they disagree with the outcome, but because they haven't been brought along on the mechanisms for achieving it. So the second one is about co-designed and participatory solutions. So as I've said already, the expectations around what it means to engage a community have evolved hugely from the days of inform and consult. And the traditional assumption has been that communities are somehow passive in the decisions that are made about interventions that will affect them directly. And we're seeing all the time an increase in, the fact that this simply isn't true. And communities really expect to be engaged very deeply. They have a huge wealth of knowledge, of contextual knowledge, and enthusiasm, and the ability to change their local situation. And that's something that there's no need to then reinvent the wheel. So this idea of co-design is very much, to us, the new norm. And so any interventions that flow from this should be hyper local, and they should be visible, and they should be actionable. And that just leads me on to the third one here, which is tangibility. And as I said at the beginning, this is about shifting away from that performative lens. We want to help our clients and our stakeholders to develop solutions collectively through co-design and active participation. But rather than getting hamstrung about an idea or an intervention not necessarily working first time, we want to stress test them in a far more rigorous way than perhaps previously has been done with a diverse group of community stakeholders, but to get them out in the community and get them into practice as soon as possible, rather than focusing more on articulating what it is we will do in the future. We need to lead with action. And the beauty of that is, just to finish that point off, is that there is so much fantastic action that is being that communities are taking themselves. It's community led or it's community based, and so in that way, organizations can very much become facilitators. And that's the line that we want to take on this, is that we don't need to come up with a flashy, high investment solution at every turn. We need to look for what is already being done, what's already being done well, what's familiar, what's sensitized within the community, and to facilitate that to be a long-term solution. So we identified six strategic avenues for this collaborative place-based action. And I appreciate this might be quite small on your screen, but I will just rattle through what you can see on here. So the 6 avenues are sanctuary. So this is very much about cultivating the types of places that people need for restoration, for privacy, and for comfort. Excuse me. The second is neighborhood. So this is about creating the places that connect people and that inspire that social exchange. Exploration. This is about the sense of engendering a sense of curiosity and the ability for people to be safe and secure in their cities, so that the sense of discovery and adventure is something that becomes part of daily living. We've got craft down in the left, and that is about championing generative cultural production and creative expression. It's not just about the arts, it's about any of the sort of less tangible assets that we have within our communities. Legacy is about how we design our places to anchor a sense of belonging, inclusion, and pride of place, recognizing that for most people, the city that they live or the urban environment that they live in is not necessarily the one that they came from. And it may not be the one that they stay in either. So cities are really transient places, and we're all the time balancing this transience with wanting to foster a population that is willing to age well and healthily in a city as well. And finally, we've got impact. So this is about leveraging, as I've spoken about in the previous slides, about leveraging the good stuff that is already going on. And making it representative, so that we are not just listening to the same voices, but we're actually helping to amplify the voices who may feel different levels of agency and are highly likely to feel different levels of agency. And again, it's only by getting into the root, into really only by immersing ourselves into what the hyperlocal priorities, stresses, tensions are, that we can work out who are the voices that need a little bit more help to reach the stage, as it were, and how can we make our interventions far more representative of community interests, rather than an external assessment of what it is that we think that communities need. And then lastly, just to finish off, I know I've spoken incredibly quickly, I am sorry, but the first thing I really want to impress again is that it's absolutely critical that we lead with action, and that we're happy to roll our sleeves up and jump in and get involved. This is about concept development. It's about defining initiatives, prioritizing the ones that we think will work with reference to the community perspective, and putting them into action. We really want to unlock this collaborative local engagement by focusing on quality of life, on co-design, and the tangibility of our solutions, because this is the era that we're coming up to. You know, we're rapidly coming up to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, and 2050 is hot on its heels. So with our clients, with all of the work that we do across the board, we're really looking for outcome-oriented initiatives that support each of those 6 avenues. Now, these won't all be equally applicable in every scenario, but they do represent the results, the reflections that we established as a result of doing this immersive research and putting into practice. And finally, just once again to reiterate that we do need to begin with the impact on our doorstep and in our streets and across our neighborhoods, and take these cues from our communities in order to secure the resilience of our places and of our businesses for many generations to come. So thank you for bearing with me. I see that my internet connection might have been a little bit wobbly throughout that, so I apologize. I would be only too delighted to speak to anybody who would like to follow up on Living Lens and its application, but very happy to take any questions now. I appreciate I've probably run over time. I apologize, but thank you for having me.
Claire, thank you very much. I think the work you're doing is very impactful, and thank you that I think you showed the passion you have with this topic, and you dialed in from your vacation from Bali, connected with us here in Germany. And I personally will invite you to Germany, because you're fully right. I think it's much we can do with the activation. Maybe one last question. So from my side, so nowadays, yeah, very much of our communication has moved to the virtual world, yeah, in business, but also in the private life. Is that a chance, or is it more an additional obstacle to activate really the communities and drive that change? How do you see it?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point. Yes, I mean, absolutely. Most of our communication, as we know only too well, is increasingly augmented by the fabulous plethora of digital and generative AI channels that we have. But we're actually seeing two different patterns emerge simultaneously, and that is that people, we live in an attention economy now, or ever more so. And people are feeling that sense of fatigue. And the result of that is that while our digital channels carry on, nonetheless, in their private lives, people are increasingly turning to the more analog version of life. And I think COVID is not the answer to, or the cause or the answer to anything and everything. But we really saw this sort of inward turn of people becoming familiar with their neighborhoods, with their locale in a way that they never have been previously.
Yeah.
And that is a trajectory that's carried on. And it's this tiring of the always on 24/7 version of life that is just as real and just as active as the digital version of life. If that makes sense. So both of those things are true.
Very true words. Thank you very much.